Welcome back to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast where we discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. And today we have a relatively short episode given the fact that there isn't too much going on in the news cycle around the big squad, but the Orlando Magic Summer League team will be taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder later on today, so stay tuned for that. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get to the first topic of today's episode, just being a little slight nod to JJ Redick, who was listed as the 22nd ranked player on a top 25 list by The Athletic of the greatest collegiate players of all time. JJ Redick, of course, is well known for being a knockdown three-point shooter both in college and on the pro level. He's a top-level scorer for the Duke Blue Devils. I believe he leads. He is the all-time program leading scorer for the Duke Blue Devils, in particularly. And I think as far as all collegiate basketball is considered, he is also the all-time leader in free throw percentage at around like 91.2. This is a guy who's been hyper productive in the college ranks and, of course, was able to come to the NBA ranks as well and produce at a high level as a knockdown three-point shooter. A guy who, up until his tenure with the New Orleans Pelicans, had never missed the postseason, was always a participant in high-leverage basketball with the Clippers, the Orlando Magic, and so on and so forth. So this is a guy that's been able to play next to some high-level guys. If I'm not mistaken, he also played on the Philadelphia 76ers as another team that was able to relatively thrive in his time there. So this is a guy who's seen the most high leverage moments, of course, playing in the ACC during a time when the ACC was king, and then coming to the league and playing on very high level playoff teams. So shout out to former shooting guard for the Orlando Magic, JJ Redick, who did spend, I believe, 7 years in a Magic uniform before being traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was in like a Tobias Harris trade, something along those lines. But spent a good amount of time in a Orlando Magic uniform, and I thought that, hey man, very nice accolade to be considered a top 25 player of all time in college. When you think about all the different names that played on the collegiate level that were super duper nice, for JJ Redick to be on that list as a guy who might not be considered as like a superstar in any real way, especially on the NBA ranks, that's big time praise. So shout out to him. Next, let's move on to I guess the best way to put it is another one of our analyst segments, right? It's another one of these articles that was written based off of a podcast where an analyst speaks on the Orlando Magic and shares his thoughts on what they think of the team going into next season. And Chris Herring of ESPN believes that the Orlando Magic are like a team on the cusp of a championship with what they've been able to do over the last couple of weeks building out the rest of their roster. He says, if there was a team casting the first stone following the Tatum injury, one that seemed to ensure next season would be a wide open one in the East, it was the Magic, who stepped forward by moving Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, and a whopping 4 first-round picks to the Grizzlies for Star Bane. It's undoubtedly a big swing, but if ever there was a time to try to make the leap, it's now. Now, let me go to the part that I think was the most glaring statement in here. Orlando, with its dominant defense and lackluster perimeter shooting, looked dangerous last season when it wasn't dealing with injuries to Banchero, Wagner, and Jalen Suggs. Adding the sharpshooting Bane gives the club a clear top 4 and more spacing for opponents to defend. If they're healthy, there's no reason the Magic should finish with fewer than 50 wins. I believe that this team is a 50-win team. I believe it when we did our over-unders, I believe it was around 52 or 53, and I believe I definitely said I would take I said that would be a best bet. I said that 52 is probably a really sweet number. I do think that 50 is very realistic for this Orlando Magic team. I don't think those are high expectations at all, especially if you feel as though they're going to finish in the top 3 in the Eastern Conference. I don't feel as though those are too high expectations. I also believe that Chris Herring, touching on specifically the three-point shooting acumen of Desmond Bane, and he didn't mention it in the article, but Tyus Jones as well, being brought to the table, addresses one of their biggest issues, which was the ability to spread the floor. They were able to thrive as a productive offense, maybe not a high-level offense, but a productive offense with Paulo Banchero, Jalen Suggs, and Franz Wagner on the floor when healthy, as Chris Herring mentions. Adding three-point shooting, adding further development internally from those guys, getting more defensive acumen from dudes like Anthony Black. These are the kind of things that are going to really change the season for the Orlando Magic next year. I wouldn't be surprised if this team was able to win more than 50 games, and I do think the bar should be around 48 to 50 games in terms of what they should be going into the season with expectations for the regular season for. You guys let me know in the comment section down below. How realistic do you think winning more than 50 games for the Orlando Magic is next season from a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being very unlikely, 10 being highly likely. Very interested to see what you guys in the comment section say below, because I'm not going to lie to you. I think a lot of people are slowly but surely, maybe even quickly, because we've done a couple of these ESPN and other high major profile speaker segments on the podcast over the last couple of weeks, and more of these analysts are in favor of what the Orlando Magic are going to look like going into next season than they are against it. I think there's going to be a lot of people that continue to slowly but surely jump on this bandwagon. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Orlando Magic are one of the most highly covered teams in the Eastern Conference going into next season, which I don't think we would have been saying had a lot of the other things in the Eastern Conference not been shaking out the way they have. With that being the case, though, the Orlando Magic still have the flexibility to make 1 or 2 more moves depending on how they go about making trades, with guys like Goga Bitadze, Wendell Carter, and Jonathan Isaac still being available as options to maybe move to flesh out different things. And the Orlando Magic Daily, shout out to them. We always have to give them their respect on Fansided because they do great work. Mentioned the idea of maybe solidifying their roster by going after Marcus Smart. And I thought this was interesting because there's a lot of people that keep trying to peg other guards onto this Magic team, despite the fact that I feel as though they pretty much fleshed out their backcourt rotation. Obviously, we talked about the idea of them going after Anthony Simons, still with the fact that Simons is on the trade block, or potentially on the trade block for the Boston Celtics as a reflip. Let me just read out some of the things that was mentioned in the article. Smart, 31, has been the heart of trade speculation throughout the entire 2025 offseason. It's not necessarily that he lacks value in Washington's locker room, but instead that he has an expiring contract which the Wizards may hope to turn into long-term assets. If the Magic can find a way to pull a trade for Smart off, then it would behoove them to explore the cost of doing business. Smart may not be the player he was when he won the 2022 Defensive Player of the Year award, but he continues to hold value. The unfortunate hurdle, of course, is that he's played just 54 games over the past 2 seasons, arguably the best explanation for why he hasn't been traded yet. Let's go to why he could be the missing piece for Orlando. Smart boasts 108 games of postseason experience, an invaluable truth the Magic must at least consider. For perspective, Bane and Jones are tied for the second on the roster in career postseason games played, with matching 27. After losing in the first round of the playoffs in back-to-back seasons, it's hard to view 2025-2026 as anything other than second round or bust for the Magic, making Smart's experience worth pursuing. Furthermore, Smart's defensive acumen continues to be a valuable weapon. Orlando is one of the best teams in the NBA at preventing opponents from scoring, but there can never be too many willing defenders on one roster. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not buying it. Yes, it's an expiring contract. That's nice. I think that at best, from a value perspective, you're able to move off of a guy who signed a little bit more long term. Maybe you trade a guy like Jonathan Isaac to be able to get off of, be able to attain Smart. Where does he play? I know that the Memphis Grizzlies viewed him as a guy who could be a Dylan Brooks replacement and ended up playing the 3 for that team, and that didn't go relatively well. Obviously, he was dealing with injuries, being one of the bigger things that did hurt him in his time with Memphis, but it was always kind of a pipe dream for the idea of him to just step in and kind of play like small ball 3 for them as a guy that makes up like the defensive grit. The playoff experience and what he brings to the table as a leader in the huddle, I think, could be very impactful. And I think at the expense of a guy like Jonathan Isaac, that could be an interesting play. But I've seen this in the comment section over the last couple of episodes, and I kind of want to touch on it in this segment because I think it is kind of an important thing to point out. I think the Orlando Magic's bigger issue has more to do with fleshing out significant talent at the forward spots than it is getting another guard. I've said it on a handful of episodes. Jalen Suggs, Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, Anthony Black, Jace Richardson, right? That's 5 guards. 5 guards right there. And Jace might not even play that much on the big squad this season with the fact that those main 4 guys all bring to the table a lot of the things that Jace Richardson already does, which makes him duplicative in a certain way. So with that being the case, like, does bringing in Marcus Smart to eat up 10, 15 minutes as your small ball 3 just for defensive purposes, like, is that enough? Is his leadership in the locker room, again, only for a season because he is an expiring contract, is it enough to feel like it's worth moving off of like a defensive centerpiece in Jonathan Isaac, who I know isn't necessarily the healthiest, neither is Marcus Smart for that matter, but still a guy that when you give him 18 to 20 minutes a game, he's like one of the best rim defenders in the league. Talking about Jonathan Isaac, of course. Like, I just don't know. I think that the Orlando Magic need to be in more conversations around guys in the front court, especially with the fact that Jonathan Isaac is injury prone and Goga Batadze isn't expiring. I think that's more of the route that they need to be exploring. So Marcus Smart just feels like another Tyus Jones acquisition. But they have Tyus Jones. So what do you need to go get another one for? I understand that Marcus Smart has significantly more postseason experience, but his experience and leadership on the bench is only going to take the Orlando Magic but so far. With the kind of assets they have left, they can't be swinging on theoretical companionship as a reason why Marcus Smart could be a day one contributor. And in terms of his actual productivity on the floor, I don't know how much more Marcus Smart brings to a team like this who significantly fleshed out their backcourt depth in really the first 2 to 3 weeks of the offseason. You guys let me know in the comment section down below if you think that Marcus Smart is indeed the missing piece for this Orlando Magic squad. I think that I agree with a lot of people that's been in the comment section lately about the idea that the front court needs to take a little bit more priority in some of these hypothetical trade situations involving the Magic. But hey, maybe Marcus Smart's defensive acumen paired with what he brings to the table as a postseason performer, maybe it does mean a lot more than I'm giving it credit. We've seen how Al Horford, when he became a member of the Boston Celtics, kind of changed some of the culture around what they had with those young teams where they were already really productive and really talented, but you bring in a guy like Al Horford and it just kind of seemed like their team settled into a more productive and more dangerous squad. And maybe that had something to do with what he brings as a locker room presence. Who knows? Maybe Marcus Smart could be a very similar situation with the Orlando Magic. I'm not as sure, but you guys let me know in the comment section down below. And last but not least, we're going to end on something really, really quickly, which is the Orlando Magic are going to be taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight in their third Summer League game, looking to get a dub. AJ Mitchell, I believe, has been shut down for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Too cool for school. He's one of those guys that falls into that too good for summer league after 1 or 2 game performances. It just shows you that we've seen everything we need to see type of things. So the Orlando Magic should be in position to, be very competitive against an Oklahoma City Thunder squad that doesn't even have 2 of their better prospects and AJ Mitchell and Nikola Topic playing in this game. Obviously, the Thunder have still been relatively solid. Man, my prediction is that the Orlando Magic do get their first dub. Actually, on the sports betting books, they are underdogs. I think they're plus 450. So if you guys are looking to put some money down on a summer league game in favor of your Orlando Magic team, they actually are considered underdogs, which means you can win maybe some decent bread if you put something small on the game. I think the Orlando Magic do get the job done. They've had 2 back-to-back games where they lost by 3 points, and they just simply struggled in the beginning of the game, which made it hard to complete the comeback. I think this is going to be a game where they finally start to right the ship and finally get their first dub of the Summer League. Do you guys think that they'll finally get a win in the get a dub in the win column in summer league, or do you think that the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to continue their winning ways and go ahead and get the dub and send our team to 0-3? What with that being the case, that is the final topic of today's episode of the Magic Latest podcast. Again, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Magic content, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.